The activities are classified into two groups, that is economic activity and non-economic activity. Whatever we do, whether it is goods and services, it should be done regularly. Only then we can consider it as business. Industry means it is concerned with production or processing of goods and services. You are separating various products from one single raw material. That is what we call as the analytical industry. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence. In this session on this first chapter, I will be dealing with what is business, what are the various activities of business. Now, let us look into what is the meaning of the word business. Now, the concept of business. So before we look into the concept of business, we have to understand that people live in a society and the needs and wants of the people are many. And to satisfy these needs and wants, we have the business community. Now, before we look into what is the meaning of business community, let us look into the meaning of the word business. The term business is derived from the word busy, means being busy. So, business is, in other words, we are referring to an occupation which is being busy all the time. So, in business, we should understand that it takes care of the needs of all the community. So, all the people in the community or in the society, they have various needs which will be fulfilled by the business community. Now, there are various type of activities which will be engaged in by this business community, and we have to have a classification of these activities. Now, let us look into the concept of business. The term business is derived from the word busy. Thus, business means being busy. So, we should understand that business has been derived from the word busy. Now, business refers to an occupation in which people regularly engaged in activities related to purchase, production, and or sale of goods and services with a view to earning profits. So, what does business actually involve? So, we should understand that business is related to purchase. So, purchase of what? Purchase of goods or raw materials, manufactured goods or anything, and production. So, they'll be producing also goods, sale of goods and services. So, business not only includes sale of goods, but also it includes the sale of services also with a view to earn profits. So, we should all understand that any business which is carried on, it is with an intention of earning profits. So, we should understand that whatever we do in business, or whether we are selling or buying, or whether we are selling goods and services, or whether we are purchasing goods and services, it is always with the profit motive. So, let us further have a look at the word business. So, people undertake various activities to satisfy their needs. So, as I had explained earlier, people have various needs. So, to satisfy their needs, they have to engage in some of the activities. If you can see here the chef is there, he is cooking in the restaurant, whereas this lady, she is cooking at home. So, we should understand that activities are broadly classified into two groups, that is economic and non-economic activities. Now, what do we mean by economic activity and what is a non-economic activity? So, let us understand that economic activities are those which we can earn our livelihood, whereas non-economic activities are performed out of love, sympathy, sentiment, patriotism, etc. So, the activities are classified into two groups, that is economic activity and non-economic activity. Economic activity is done to earn a livelihood. So, what are those things which we do to earn our livelihood? That is called as economic activity, or that which generates income. That is an economic activity, whereas non-economic activity is performed out of love. So, a lady cooking at home for her family, that is a non-economic non-economic activity. But the same cooking activity, if it is carried on in a restaurant, that will be called as an economic activity. So now the lady who's cooking at home, she is doing it out of the love for her family. So it is performed out of love, sympathy, sentiment, etc. So they all comprise non-economic activity. So we should understand what is the meaning of the word economic, what activities are considered economic and what are non-economic. Now, economic activities may be further divided into three categories, namely business, profession and environment. So, we should understand that all of us cannot do business, or all of us cannot become a professional, or all of us cannot be in employment. So, in this society, we have three types of people. That is, some are engaged in business, some are engaged in profession, some are engaged in employment. So, they all generate a livelihood for these people engaged in these activities. And so, we have just classified the economic activities as business, profession and employment. Now, we should also know that business may be defined as an economic activity involving production and sale of goods and services undertaken with a motive of earning profit by satisfying the human needs in the society. So, the business is providing all these goods and there is the consumer who is ready to buy whatever is offered by the business community. So, it is an economic activity involving production and sale of goods and services undertaken with the motive of earning profit. So, this earning profit should be there and this profit should be earned by satisfying the human needs in the society. Now, let us look into what are the features of business. Now, when we look into the features of business, it is an economic activity. Now, why should we consider business as an economic activity? Because it is done with the main aim of earning profits, and with these profits, the businessman will be earning his own livelihood. So, anything which involves the sale or transfer of goods and services for money, that we call it as a business, and wherever money is involved, we call it as an economic activity. So, we should understand that business is an economic activity. Now, the second characteristic of business is production or procurement of goods and services. Now, what do we mean by production or procurement of goods and services? So, as we all know that the business community is engaged in satisfaction of human needs or satisfaction of the needs of the consumer. So, he should be able to identify what are the needs of the consumer and then he should undertake proper manufacture of those goods which are needed by the consumer, and that is why we say that business involves production. So, he will be producing all those goods which are needed by the consumer. So, it may be anything, whatever we are using in our daily lives, whether it is the toothpaste or whether it is the toilet soap or whether it is a face powder or the cream which we use daily. So, everything is given by business. So, all these production activities are undertaken after listening to the needs of the consumers. We also know that procurement of goods and services. Now, what do we mean by procurement? So, procurement means, in other words, you are procuring the raw materials for the goods and then you are converting them into finished products. So, all those activities engaged in that we call it as business activity. Then, sale or exchange of goods and services. So, it does not only mean production, but it also means sale of goods. So, you may be just importing goods from the other country and you may be selling it here. So, that also will be considered as a business activity. Sale or exchange of goods and services. So, you may be service provider. Service provider means you may be providing insurance services, banking services, warehousing services or the transport services. So, whenever you are providing services or whether you are providing goods for the benefit of the consumers, so it will be called as a business. Then next one, dealing in goods and services on a regular basis. Now, what do we mean by dealings in goods and services on a regular basis? Now, for example, I have an old television in my home and I have purchased a new television. Now, when I purchase a new television, this old television will not satisfy my needs. So I don't want it. So I am just selling the old television. Now, when I sell the television, will it become an economic activity? No, it is not an economic activity because I am not doing it on a regular basis. So just because I have no need for the old television set, I am just selling it off. So that is just a one-time activity. But then if he or she is a television dealer and if he or she is selling televisions every day, then that we consider it as an economic activity because he is doing it on a regular basis. So whatever we do, whether it is goods and services, it should be done regularly. Only then we can consider it as business. Then next characteristics of business activity is profit earning. Now, we all should understand that the main objective of starting a business is to earn profits. If you don't have profits, it means that the business is not running efficiently, or if the profits are there, only then the business can survive. So whatever you have invested in the business, you should get an additional amount of return on that investment. That return, additional whatever you get on your investment, that is what we will be calling as profits. And this profit earning should be there because with the help of profits only, the businessman will be earning his livelihood. So the profit earning element should be there. Only then we can consider it as a business. But if it is a service oriented organization, we cannot consider those activities engaged by a service oriented organization, or they have this service motto with them. That is, they are doing not for profit but as a philanthropic activity. So for free they are offering the hospital services. So that we cannot consider it as business because they are not getting any money in return. Then next is uncertainty of return. So why do we say that uncertainty of return? So we don't know what will be happening in future. Suppose today I invest 1 lakh of rupees in a business. I will not know what will happen to my money in future because the future is very, very uncertain. No matter how much ever you plan for the business, so there are various kinds of risks involved. So whatever money I have invested in the business, I may not get a return on it. So there is uncertainty of return. Suppose war is declared, then all the businesses will have to shut down and there will be no business at all. So whatever I have invested the money in my business, so that will be waste. I will not have any return on that, whatever money I have invested. So we should understand that in business there is uncertainty of returns. If the business prospers, that is well and good. But then if the business doesn't prosper and if there is any hindrance to the business, then our returns are not secured. So we should understand that business has uncertain returns. Then last characteristic of a business activity is element of risk. Now what do we mean by element of risk? So whenever we are doing a business or whenever we have decided to do a business and we have invested our money in the business, it always comes with the element of risk. Now what are the various risks here that we will be discussing later on in the chapter. For now, let us understand that business comes with its own risk. The greater the risk, the greater will be the profit. So there are various types of risk. So some of the natural causes, human causes, and some are the business causes. So there are certain causes for this risk, and because of this risk the business will have to suffer losses or he may earn profits because of this risk also. So we should understand these are the various features of business. Now let us have a comparison between what is business, what is profession, and what is employment. So economic activities are classified into three, that is business, profession, and employment. So there are three types of economic activity. Now let us have a comparative study of what is business, what is profession, and what is employment. Now First one is mode of establishment. Now, if you look into business, it depends on the entrepreneur's decision and other legal formalities if necessary. Suppose I want to start a business, I can always, and I have the money, I can always invest the money in the business and start a business anytime I need. But then, if it is a profession, so what do you mean by profession? So, profession is something which needs some specialized knowledge. So, if you have an MBBS degree, only then you can take up the doctor's profession. Or if you have a degree in chartered accountancy, only then you can become an auditor. So, if you want to pursue a profession, then we should have a professional body, or we should have that special knowledge to start that profession. So, membership of a professional body and certificate of practice. So, if I want to become a chartered accountant, or if I want to become an auditor, then I should have a degree in chartered accountancy, and in addition to that, I should be the member of that body, and also I should have the certificate of practice. But then if it is in employment, I should have an employment letter and service agreement. So in employment, how do we just get into employment? If you have the necessary degree, then if you meet advertisement in the paper seeking that they need a person with such and such a qualification, you can always apply to that company, and then if the terms and conditions are agreeable to both the parties, then you can always get employed in that particular organization. And how does the employment start? By receiving the appointment letter and service agreement. So once you get the appointment letter and the service agreement, you can start off with the employment. So we should understand that in business, profession and employment, in business, it depends on the entrepreneur's decision to start the business, whereas in profession, the basic requirement is to have that particular field of knowledge, whereas in employment, their terms and conditions should be agreeable to both to the employee and the employer. Then next, the basic nature of work. So in this business, it will be provision of goods and services to the public. Suppose you are having a provision store, then you will be selling goods and services to the ultimate consumer. Or if you are running a travel agency, then you will be giving your vehicles on hire to the people who come and seek those vehicles. So in this way, you are providing goods and services to the public, and in the prospect, you will be earning profits. Then in profession, you will be rendering personalized and expert services. Suppose it is a lawyer's profession, then people come seeking advice from the lawyer. So they may be having any issues with their family property, or it may be any family issues also. So they will be asking for professional and expert advice from that particular lawyer. Or if it is related to finance, then they may go to an auditor and ask what are the various tax benefits. So in this way, the professional should be able to give expert advice and personalized advice to his clients. But in employment, performing work as per service contract or rules of service. So, but in a case of employment, suppose you are employed in a particular organization, then what should you do? So, you will have to work as per the service contract. So, the service contract will lay down all the codes of conduct in the organization. So, what is the time to come, and what is the dress code, and how you should behave. So, all these things will be mentioned, and depending on that, he or she will have to work. Then next one is qualification. Now, what is the qualification we need for business? No minimum qualification is necessary. So, whether he is illiterate or illiterate, whether he has a degree or does not have a degree, then nobody will question, because it is his own business. So, there is no qualification necessary to start a business. But in case of profession, qualifications, expertise and training in specific field as prescribed by the professional body is a must. But in case of profession, we need to see that that person should be a chartered accountant, or he or she must be a doctor, or if it is a specialist, he should have his MD degree. Only then he can be considered as a specialist. So we should understand that they need a proper qualification, expertise and training. So all this is necessary to pursue a particular profession. But then in case of employment, qualification and training as prescribed by the employer. So we should understand that if you want to get employed in an organization, if you have the necessary qualification, then the employer himself will give training and then he will put you on the job. Then the next comparison is reward or return. So in business, what is the reward for carrying out business? It will be the profit, whatever is arising out of the business activity. Whereas in a profession, whatever is the professional fee. Suppose it is the lawyer, he may charge you a fee. If it is a chartered accountant, he may also charge some fees. So that is what we call as the professional fees. But if it is an employment, he or she may be drawing a salary or wages. So salary is one time monthly paid, whereas wages may be paid on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. Now, the next comparison here, it is capital investment. Now, capital is required as per the size and nature of business. So, in case of business, so we should understand that depending on the size of the business and the nature of the business, the capital has to be invested. Suppose if you are dealing with items which are very costly, for example, you want to start a jewelry store, then you will require a very huge amount of capital, because you will have to invest in first in land and building, and then next you will also have to invest a lot of money in putting all the necessary goods for a jewelry store. So the investment will be very high. But then if it is a small provision store, then the investment will not be so high. So depending on the size of business and nature of business, so we will have the requirement of capital. But then if it is for a profession, limited capital needed for establishment. So if you are a doctor, or if you are a specialist in any doctor's field, or if you are an MBBS or something like that, or if you are a chartered accountant, an auditor, then what is the capital you need? You may need just an office and then one table and a chair and one system. So that will be sufficient. So as and when the people come, you will be just entering all whatever the necessary things in the computer. So nothing much needed here in a profession. But then if it is employment, no capital will be required. So you will just come and give in your services and go, and at the end of the month you will be having your salary. So we should understand that for the business, the capital investment is high depending on the nature and size of business, but for profession, limited amount of capital may be needed, but then for employment, no capital is required. Then next, we should understand what is risk here. So profits are uncertain and irregular. Risk is present. Yes, so business, we all have just come across the features of business. So when we understand the features of business, risk is the prominent feature of business. So until and unless you are ready to take up a risk, you will not earn profit or you cannot do business. Then here in profession, fee is generally regular and certain, and there is some risk. So if you are a very good advisor, or if you have a lot of clients, then the fee or whatever the remuneration being generated, that will be on a regular basis. So it all depends on the skill of the lawyer, skill of the doctor, or skill of the chartered accountant. But then if it is a profession, there is fixed and regular pay, no or little risk at all. So in employment as such, there is no risk. Then next, transfer of interest. Now what do we mean by transfer of interest? Suppose if it is a business and I want to just transfer my business, then I can easily do so with the help of certain formalities. So I can sell my business to some other person. So transfer is possible. But then here, in case of profession, I cannot transfer because it is not possible to transfer my professional degree to somebody else. But then in case of employment also, there is no transfer of interest because it is not possible. Then next is the code of conduct. So what do you mean by code of conduct? So the rules and regulations to be followed by the people. As such, in business, we don't have any code of conduct, but then there are certain rules which are laid down by the Chamber of Commerce. So they have to follow those rules, and in addition to that, they don't have any other code of conduct. But then in case of profession, there is professional code of conduct to be followed. For example, if it is a doctor's profession, then they have to have the white coat, and they have to have the stethoscope, and they have to be a member of the medical association. In the same way, if he is a lawyer, he will have to have that black coat, and then he will have to be a member of the bar association. There are certain norms of behavior which are being expected from that particular profession. But whereas in case of employment, norms of behavior laid down by the employer are to be followed. So the code of conduct for employment is, so whatever the rules of the regulations of the organization, that has to be followed strictly by the employee. Now, the last one is the factory. So, for example, for a business will be any shop or a factory, whereas the example for profession will be legal or a medical profession, or can be any chartered accountant. But example for employment will be jobs in banks, insurance companies, government departments, colleges, schools, etc. So, all these comprise the business, profession and employment. Now, let us have a look into the classification of business activities. Now, if we are looking into the classification, there are two broad categories of activities. Now, we consider them as industry and commerce. Now, what do we mean by industry? Industry is concerned with production or processing of goods and materials. So, if we have two broad classification, one is industry, one is commerce. Now, industry means it is concerned with production or processing of goods and services. So, production of goods and processing of goods, they come under business. Now, what do we mean by commerce? Commerce includes all those activities which are necessary for facilitating the exchange of goods and services. So, on one hand, we are producing goods and services. On the other hand, we are having exchange of goods and services. So, these both are essential to carry out a business in any part, any country. So, we have this industry and commerce. So, on the basis of these two categories, we may classify business firms into industrial and commercial enterprises. So, industrial enterprises on one hand and commercial enterprises on the other. So, we should understand that what is industry? Industry refers to manufacturing of goods and services needed by the people, whereas commerce refers to just selling all those things to the ultimate consumer. Now, in this chart, we have a classification of the various business activity. Now, business activity is broadly classified into industry and commerce. Now, we all know that industry is involved in production of goods and services, whereas commerce is involved in exchange and sale of goods and services. Industry can be classified as primary industry, secondary industry and tertiary industry. Now, what do we mean by primary industry? Now, primary industry refers to getting products from nature. So, whatever the natural resources are there, you just dig up the earth and get all the natural resources. So, it may be you are growing agricultural crops, or you are mining for iron ore, you are mining for precious metals. So, all this comprise of the primary industry. So, where you will be just drawing the natural resources, or you will be digging up the natural resources for the purpose of production, or you may be also involved in reproduction of farm animals or domestic animals. You just reproduce them and sell them, and in the process you are earning money. So they are all called as primary industry. Now what do we mean by secondary industry? Now in the secondary industry, it is a further process of the first one. In the primary industry, we will be digging up the earth and just collecting all the iron ore which is present in the earth. Now in the secondary industry, we will be having a further process. So you will be converting all that iron ore what you got from digging up into molten steel, or which will be used for further processing. Whereas in the tertiary sector, we should understand that it is a facilitator for all this primary and secondary industry. Or tertiary sector, it is involved in producing of goods and services to the people. It is usually engaged in providing services to the people. Services like insurance, banking, transport, finance, warehousing, etc. So all these come under the tertiary sector. That is insurance, banking, then what do you say, warehousing, then we also have the transport, etc. So they all come under the tertiary sector. Now again we have a further classification of the primary industry. One is extractive, one is genetic. Now what do we mean by extractive industry? Extractive industry means you are utilizing the natural resources which are present in the earth, or you are involved in farming, mining, fishing, etc. So all these will be considered under extractive industry. Now second one is the genetic industry. What do we mean by genetic industry? So in this genetic industry, mostly it will be through reproduction of animals. So you may be breeding livestock in the farm or breeding fishing also. So all these things which you do through reproduction of animals, so all those we consider under this genetic industry. Now in the secondary industry, again it can be classified as manufacturing sector and the construction sector. Now what do we mean by manufacturing? In manufacturing, we try to see that whatever we got from the secondary industry, suppose the secondary industry has given us raw iron, so that iron will be converted into something else, or you convert that iron into spare part which will be used for the automobiles. So that we call it as the manufacturing sector. And then in the construction sector, we should understand that it is involved in building of roads, building of bridges, building of ships, etc. So all construction activities will be under this construction industry. Then again, if you have a further classification of the manufacturing sector, we have the analytical industry. Now what do you mean by analytical industry? You just draw more than one material from the main product. Suppose if it is all crude oil, so you have crude oil in you and you are just separating the crude oil into petrol, gas and kerosene and various other forms. So in this way, that we call it as the analytical industry. So you are separating various products from one single raw material. That is what we call as the analytical industry. Now let us look into what is synthetic industry. Now this synthetic industry, we combine various ingredients and make a product. For example, cement. So that is a product of the cement industry. Now the next industry is the processing industry. So in this processing industry, we can take the example of sugar. So the sugar cane will be taken as a raw material and it will undergo a process, and in the end we get sugar. So that is what the processing industry. The sugar cane is processed into sugar. Then the last kind of industry is assembling. So in this assembling industry, for example, if it is an automobile industry, so there will be various spare parts which will be combined into making an engine of the car, or you just assemble all the parts and convert it into a car. So assembling of the various parts of a car, that itself is a separate industry which we call it as the assembling industry. The spare parts will be assembled into a full-fledged car. Now, coming to commerce, we have two classifications here. One is trade, one is auxiliaries to trade. Now, what do we mean by trade? Trade refers to exchange of sale of goods and services. Auxiliaries to trade means they are helping us in this trading activity. Now, the trade can be further classified into internal trade and external trade. Now, what do we mean by internal trade? Any trading activity considered within the country. Within the country, they are called as internal trade. Now, what is external trade? Outside the country, that is exports and imports. So, they are external trade. Now, again in internal trade, we have two types, that is wholesale and retail. Now, what is wholesale? Once the goods are manufactured, the producers will sell them to the wholesalers, who in turn will sell them to the retailers. So, there is a chain of distribution from the producer to the consumer, that we call it as wholesale business or the bulk business. But in retail, we should understand that retail business is just selling to the direct consumer. From the wholesaler, the goods will be purchased by the retailer and he will be selling to the ultimate consumer, and so he is called as the retailer. So any person who sells to the ultimate consumer, we call him as the retailer. Whereas in external trade, we have three types, that is import trade, export trade and entrepot trade. Now, what is import trade? You are buying goods from other countries. You buy goods from foreign countries, that is called as import trade. What is export trade? You are selling goods to other countries. So, that is export trade. Entrepot trade is goods come to our port and this leave our port, that is called as the entrepot trade. So, there is, we should understand that import, export and entrepot. Now, let us look into the auxiliaries to trade. The first one is warehousing. Now, what is this warehousing? Warehousing refers to storing the goods, making provision for storing the goods until they reach the hands of the final consumer. So, you provide proper storage facilities for all the goods which you have manufactured in the industry. Now, this warehousing facility will remove certain hindrances of trade, or we should understand that these auxiliaries to trade, they remove the hindrances to trade. Now, what are the various hindrances to trade? So, the various hindrances to trade may be in the form of people, or it may be in the form of place, time, finance, etc. Now, when you are having this warehousing facility, it will remove the hindrance of time. So, in this warehousing facility, you can store the goods up till the time they are being sold, or until the product is being demanded by the consumer, the goods will be remaining in the warehouse. So, they will be giving time utility. So, as and when the stock gets over in the retail market, these goods can be supplied from the warehouse to the retailer. So, they will be creating time utility, or this warehousing facility will remove all hindrances of time. Then second one is insurance. Now, what is this insurance? So, we should understand that the goods have to be protected until they are being sold, and there is lot of risk involved in carrying these goods. So, they have to be protected, or we have to ensure that the goods are not spoiled before they reach the hands of the consumers. So, there is a lot of money or risk involved in holding these goods up to the time of consumption. So, the proper insurance facility has to be provided for these goods. Or suppose you are sending the goods to foreign countries, then the goods have to travel for a long time in the ships, and anything may happen on the way when the goods are being transported. So, proper insurance facilities are to be provided to ensure that the goods are not damaged and the goods reach the other port safely. And for this, we need the services of the insurance companies. Then next one is advertising. What is this advertisement? So advertisement helps the people to know what are the various goods available in the market. It will create an awareness among the consumers about the various goods which are being sold in the market, and hence advertisement is very essential for the sale of goods. We cannot just produce the goods and keep it in the godown. It will not sell until and unless the goods are advertised, and hence promotional activity will remove all hindrances to sale. Then next kind of auxiliaries to trade is transportation. Now why do we need transportation? Because for example, you are growing tea in Assam, you are growing coffee in Coorg, but then these coffee and tea are consumed by people all over the country. So what should we do? We have to transfer these goods to the people all over the country. We have to ensure that the supply goes throughout the country. So for that we need this transportation. So transportation is very important, and this transportation will remove all hindrances of place. So it will give place utility, or it will ensure that whatever goods are being produced, it will reach the hands of the ultimate consumer. So only through transportation you can just transfer the goods from the place of production to the place of consumption. And lastly, we have the banking and financing. So financing is very essential for any business activity. Only with the finance we will be able to run the business. So whenever you have produced the goods, you have to wait till the goods are sold, and then there will be a long time gap between the time of production and the time of sale. So to just provide for this time gap, the banking or the financing companies are ready to provide finance to the businessmen, so that they will be able to ensure that after the sale they will be just reimbursing the money whatever they have borrowed. So these are the auxiliaries to trade. Now here we should understand that auxiliaries to trade, they are known as assisting the trade. They are known as auxiliaries to trade, and they are generally referred to as services because they are in the nature of facilitating the activities relating to industry. So transport, banking, insurance, warehousing and advertisement, they are all auxiliaries to trade. Then it is just a repetition here. So banking provides financial assistance to the manufacturer and trader. Insurance covers various kinds of business risks. Warehousing creates time utility by way of storage facilities. Advertising provides information to the customers. So here we can know that what are the various services given by this auxiliaries to trade. Now let us discuss what are the objectives of business. Now we all know that most common objective of business is to earn profit, but other than that, what are the other objectives here? So objectives are needed in every area that influences the survival and prosperity of business. So objectives are essential for doing any activity. Now objectives have to be specific in every area and sphere of business. It also enables the business to analyze their own performance and take steps as necessary to improve their performance in future. So we should have an objective whenever we start a business. Now what is the first objective of business? This is market standing. So what do we mean by market standing? That is, maintaining goodwill and reputation of one's business is paramount to succeed and prosper. So a good businessman should maintain his own reputation, and he should also have earn this goodwill. So that will help him in market standing. So it helps in forming a distinct identity in the market, and it is referred to as market standing in relation to his competitors. So market standing means what is the position of the business. So how do you stand? Where do you stand in the market? What is the market share of the business? So all that refers to market standing. Then second objective of business is innovation. Now what do you mean by innovation? So innovation is central to the growth of any business. So it is defined as introduction of new ideas or methods, in the way something is done or made. However, it does not imply a new product is to be manufactured. So, innovation is necessary. So, we should understand that whenever innovation is defined as introduction of new ideas or methods. So, if you are starting a business, you should have this innovative, it should be done with an objective of innovation. Then, next objective of business is productivity. Now, what is productivity? It is concerned by comparing the value of output with the value of input. It is used as a measure of efficiency. So, the output should be more than the input. Suppose you are investing rupees 1 lakh worth of goods, then you should be able to get at least 1,10,000 worth of output. Only then we can know that that business is efficient. Then the next objective of business is financial and fiscal resources. Okay, the first is physical and financial resources. So, whenever we have a business, we need some physical resources as well as financial resources. Now, what do we mean by physical resources? Physical resources may be in the way of plant and machinery, land and building, and all the furniture and equipments. All these are physical resources, whereas financial resources refer to the provision of banking facilities or the financing facilities which are needed to run the business. Then the next objective of business is to earn profits. As you all know, profits are the indicator of the efficiency of business. How efficient the business is, it will be indicated by the profits generated. So, profits are also necessary for the survival of the business. Next one is social responsibility. Now, what is social responsibility? We should understand that the business will prosper only if the society is encouraging that business, and it will draw all the resources required for its business from the society, and as such it should see that it will provide for the social welfare. So, it will engage itself in philanthropic activities. So, they may do something for the benefit of the girl child, or the business may contribute for the preservation of wildlife in the country, or they may set up many schools for the benefit of the students. So, all these are corporate social responsibilities or social welfare activities done for the betterment of the society. Next, manager performance and development. So, a manager is very, very important to the business. So, he will be coordinating all the activities of the business, and through his motivational words and through his leadership, he should ensure that all of the employees of that particular organization, they give their maximum performance for the business. Then last one is worker performance and attitude. So, any employee of the organization for that matter, he should work with 100% efficiency. He should ensure that his services are being utilized by the organization, and he is doing his best for the organization, and he should work with a positive attitude. Only then the business will prosper. So, we have come to the end of this session on business and the classification of business activities, and also the various classification of business, that is trade, commerce, etc. Hope you have understood this session. Thank you.